Yes, I'm disappointed that the ministers or any minister from the Department of Enterprise hasn't come in this evening, because I think this is an important issue and we know it's been going on a long time. It's an area where I have a lot of interest in is bogus self-employment. I was part of the Social Welfare Committee's report into bogus self-employment. And we know there's more bogus self-employment than we originally would have thought. Now, RTE commissioned Eversheds to an independent internal review to determine whether there have been workers misclassified as employees, which was a bit startling at the time, because the DESP should have been investigating RTE in relation to that, not an independent company. The DESP started its investigation into it in 2020, 2 years after Eversheds started theirs, and they're looking into 500 cases at the moment, and the review is ongoing. And it was just yesterday I received a number of emails from workers in RTE concerned about what was happening, and I'm going to read out one email and it just gives a flavour. I'm contacting you as part of a group of workers within RTE who are experiencing serious difficulties with our contracts and employment status. We are part of an ongoing bogus self-employment investigation being carried out by the DESP, which follows the recent Eversheds process. As part of the Eversheds process, it has been determined that many of us were placed on incorrect contracts over many years and in some cases decades. As a result of this, we've missed out on multiple employment benefits enjoyed by colleagues who are fortunate enough to be employed correctly. Some of these benefits include, but are not limited to, holiday pay, sick pay, maternity leave and pension. Through the process, RTE have now accepted our start dates as being much earlier than our first employment contracts in 2019. However, while RTE are willing to accept the early employment start date, the settlement offer they have put forward in recognition of being misclassified does not adequately reflect our lost entitlements and does not come close to fair compensation. We are particularly concerned that our pension benefits have not been addressed. This leaves many of us in the position of having worked for RTE for most of our working lives, yet have no staff pension as enjoyed by our peers. The union, the NUJ, advised us that RTE will not enter into discussions on the pension contributions because it is unaffordable for the organisation. And this comes at a time when RTE have been given extra money by the government. It seems to us that RTE has acknowledged there was a wrongdoing, but don't want to admit liability. And they're asking, is this acceptable? And just yesterday, workers met with SIP2 and the group of unions that are negotiating on their behalf. And SIP2 so the feedback was that RTE are not willing to move the acceptance date because RTE are asking those workers to vote tomorrow on the acceptance of those conditions. So I just think it's very, very bad form for an organisation like RTE treating workers like this. Workers shouldn't be forced to go into voting tomorrow on something that they're unclear of, because if they vote on that, that's what they have to accept. Many of them will probably not vote at all because they don't want to be tied into an agreement that they didn't agree with and that hasn't been finished as far as they're concerned. And I want to raise this issue today because of the fact that tomorrow is that date.
Thank you, Deputy Collins, and thanks for raising this very important issue. And employment status has implications for pay-related social insurance contributions and associated social welfare benefits, tax treatment and employment rights. Many statutory employment rights are only available to employees as opposed to those who are self-employed. There are 3 different statutory bodies in place that make determinations on the employment status of a person for the purpose of PRSI, tax and employment rights. These bodies are firstly, the scope section in the Department of Social Protection, which determines employment status with a view to deciding the appropriate class of PRSI for an individual. The second body which may make determinations of employment status is the Office of the Revenue Commissioners, where employment status determines tax treatment. And the third body is the Adjudication Service of the Workplace Relations Commission, or the WRC, which determines employment status as a preliminary issue when adjudicating unemployment rights complaints. The WRC is an independent statutory body under the aegis of the Department of Enterprise, Trade and Employment. And information on WRC's complaint process may be accessed at the following link: refer a dispute, make a complaint, Workplace Relations Commission. The WRC also provides a telephone information service, and this service is manned by experienced WRC information officers. The issue of misclassification of employment status is a complex matter, and decisions of the DSP scope section or the WRC or revenue are not binding on each other. Appeals from the DSP scope section are referred to the Social Welfare Appeals Office, and appeals from revenue are referred to the Tax Appeals Commission, and appeals from the WRC are referred to the Labour Court. I understand that RTE has engaged in an internal process of review carried out by Eversheds, Sutherland, and the scope section in the Department of Social Protection is investigating this matter. The Government takes the issue of false self-employment very seriously, and in this regard the Determination of Employment Status Working Group has been established and is chaired by Minister English, Minister of State for Business, Employment and Retail. The purpose of this working group is to examine issues around employment status, considering the scale of misclassification, and to discuss the potential to improve systems by which correct employment status is determined. The first meeting of this group took place on Wednesday the 13th of April and the second on Tuesday 21st of June 2022, and it is intended to meet again in the near future. The group consists of representatives from ICTU, IBEC, the Construction Federation of Ireland and ISME, as well as officials from the Department of Enterprise, Trade and Employment, the Revenue Commissioners and the Department of Social Protection.
Thanks, Minister, and thanks for giving a breakdown of the different statutory bodies in place that make determinations on the employment status of a person for the purpose of PRSI. But here we have a situation where workers that have nearly 20 years service who are being told that they have no pension rights, so they're not going to be allowed into the pension, staff pension, and other issues. I got a reply from one of the workers again today, and said there was a meeting with SIFTU, and the feedback was that RTE are not willing to move the acceptance date of tomorrow, not willing to look at pensions, and it's take it or leave it. Our understanding is that RTE has engaged a top legal firm to deal with any cases we may bring, and seem willing to spend money fighting our entitlement to pensions as opposed to address our pension issues. SIFTU have also said that they have not agreed this offer, and RTE refused to engage with them on the matter, which is pretty confusing at this point, if SIFTU have not negotiated any part of this. The legislation, the employment legislation in this country is very weak. Where an employer here, RTE, is, according to these workers, not negotiating with the unions involved, the SIFTU, the NUJ, etc. And these workers could be facing a very difficult situation tomorrow and after. And I think the Minister should intervene here and demand that the Director of RTE meet with the Government in relation to this, because you depend on your pension. These workers were working with RTE illegally to a certain degree. Well, they were working illegally. It's bogus self-employed. It's a miscalculation of your employment status, and by the fact that they have been deemed that they weren't bogus self-employment means that the RTE knew that they were employing these workers, should be employing these workers directly and not through a bogus self-employed contract. So I'm asking Minister, the Minister Damien English meet with the Director of RTE in relation to this, and give some explanation as to why these workers are not being given their pension rights.
Thank you, Deputy. Minister, please, 2 minutes.
Thank you again, Deputy. And as again, I understand that RTE has engaged in an internal process of review carried out by Eversheds, Sutherland, and the scope section is the Department of Social Protection investigating this matter. I will bring your views to the Minister to seek a meeting with RTE to try to resolve this. And as I said, the Government does take seriously the issue of false self-employment, and I hope that the next few days that there will be, I suppose, an agreement in place. But I can only bring back your concerns to the Minister, and I'll do that this evening.